Get ready to witness the most shocking courtroom moment in Judge Judy history. When Vivian Blackwell, the 42-year-old wife of tech billionaire Marcus Blackwell, walked into that courtroom wearing a $12,000 Chanel suit and an 8-carat diamond ring worth more than most people's houses, she had absolutely no idea that her entire world was about to collapse on national television. This wasn't just any wealthy woman having a bad day in court. This was a billionaire's wife who thought her husband's $4.7 billion fortune made her completely untouchable, immune to consequences, and superior to everyone around her. She strutted in carrying a Hermes Birkin bag worth $85,000, the kind of accessory that costs more than the average American family earns in 2 years, and she carried herself like she owned not just that courtroom, but everyone in it. What started as her arrogant laughter directed straight at Judge Judy's face ended with her sobbing uncontrollably, begging for mercy from the same judge she had just mocked and humiliated in front of millions of viewers. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane, what elevates it beyond just another entitled rich person getting their comeuppance. Vivian didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television. What Judge Judy uncovered in that courtroom was so devastating, so completely shocking, that it exposed Vivian's entire lifestyle as a systematic fraud built on the exploitation of vulnerable workers. We're talking about a woman who spent $127,000 on luxury shopping in a single month while refusing to pay her personal stylist a $3,500 monthly salary. We're talking about someone who dropped $15,000 on one dinner party but claimed she couldn't afford to compensate the young woman who worked 40 hours a week organizing her 300-piece designer wardrobe. Judge Judy had been setting a trap from the very first question, and every designer label Vivian flaunted, every dismissive comment she made, every arrogant gesture she threw around was being catalogued by a legal mind that had crushed entitled people for 25 years before Vivian was even born. Picture this scene clearly in your mind. Vivian Blackwell is the kind of woman who has never worked a legitimate day in her life since marrying into billions at age 28. She's the kind of person who fires housekeepers for looking at her the wrong way, who treats service workers like they're furniture that occasionally needs replacing, who returns designer dresses after wearing them once with the tags carefully sewn back in like she invented the scam. She spent $80,000 every single month on her American Express Black Card, money she never earned, never worked for, never sacrificed anything to obtain. She had 3 personal assistants whose entire job was managing her shopping appointments and her social calendar. This woman walked into Judge Judy's courtroom like she was gracing a charity gala with her presence, like everyone there should feel honored that someone of her elevated status would even acknowledge their existence. Her confidence was off the charts, completely stratospheric, built on a foundation of wealth she married into and a sense of superiority she absolutely did not earn. The case seemed simple enough on the surface, almost boring by courtroom standards. Vivian was suing her former personal stylist, a 29-year-old woman named Jennifer Rodriguez, for $15,000. The claim was straightforward theft. Vivian alleged that Jennifer had stolen designer clothes worth $50,000 from her massive walk-in closet, pieces that Vivian claimed were irreplaceable, priceless, essential to her lifestyle. But Jennifer had filed a counterclaim that told a completely different story, a counterclaim that accused Vivian of refusing to pay her for 8 months of full-time work, wages that totaled $22,000 that Vivian simply decided she didn't feel like paying. What the audience watching from home didn't know, what Vivian herself was completely unaware of in her bubble of entitled ignorance, was that Judge Judy had already spotted 23 separate inconsistencies in Vivian's initial paperwork before the case even started. 23 lies, 23 contradictions, 23 red flags that told Judge Judy exactly what kind of person she was dealing with, and Judge Judy was absolutely ready to make an example out of her that would echo through courtroom history and across every social media platform on earth. Smash that like button right now because what you're about to witness will restore your faith that justice can still prevail, that arrogance has a price, and that karma has absolutely perfect timing when it decides to strike. Hit subscribe because this case becomes a masterclass in why wealth doesn't equal wisdom, why money can't buy you respect, and why Judge Judy's courtroom remains the one place where your bank account balance means absolutely nothing and your character means everything. This isn't just a courtroom dispute over stolen clothes and unpaid wages. This is what happens when unlimited money collides head-on with unlimited arrogance, when someone who has never faced consequences meets the one authority figure who cannot be bought, intimidated, or impressed by billion-dollar net worths and designer accessories. The Judge Judy courtroom was buzzing with its usual electric energy that Thursday afternoon. Cameras were rolling live, capturing what the producers and crew members assumed would be another routine small claims dispute for millions of Americans to watch from their living rooms during lunch breaks and lazy afternoons. The studio audience had settled into their seats, expecting the typical back-and-forth drama they'd come to love about wealthy people fighting over relatively small amounts of money. Production assistants were making their final checks on lighting and sound equipment. The bailiff, Petrie Hawkins Bird, took his customary position near the bench with the calm professionalism of someone who'd seen literally everything in his decades alongside Judge Judy. Judge Judy herself was reviewing her notes one last time, her sharp eyes scanning the case file with the practiced efficiency of a legal mind that had processed over 20,000 cases. Nobody in that room, not the crew, not the audience, not even the experienced Judge Judy herself, had any clue they were about to witness a moment that would become television history and break the internet within hours of airing. This was supposed to be Vivian Blackwell's moment of triumph, her opportunity to publicly humiliate the woman she viewed as nothing more than ungrateful help who dared to challenge someone of her social status. She had spent 3 full weeks preparing for this appearance, not because she was worried about losing, but because she wanted her performance to be perfect. She'd watched Judge Judy episodes to study the format. She'd practiced her arguments in front of the full-length mirrors in her master bedroom suite that was larger than most people's entire apartments. In her mind, this case wasn't really about recovering $15,000 for stolen clothes. The money meant nothing to someone whose husband could lose $1 million in the stock market and not even notice. No, this was about proving a point, about demonstrating to everyone watching that people like Jennifer Rodriguez need to know their place in the social hierarchy, that consequences exist for workers who dare to speak up against their wealthy employers. She'd actually bragged to her friends at the country club that she was going to make Judge Judy look foolish on national television, that she'd show America how the real world works for people at her level of wealth and status. Vivian's entrance into that courtroom was nothing short of theatrical. She didn't simply walk through the door like a normal person arriving for a legal proceeding. She glided, she swept, she made an entrance like she was arriving at a red carpet premiere where photographers needed to capture her best angles. Her blonde hair had been freshly blown out that morning at her standing appointment that cost $800 per session, styled in perfect waves that didn't move even when she turned her head. Her makeup was flawless, applied by a professional who came to her home at 6 in the morning to ensure every detail was camera-ready. That $12,000 Chanel suit fit her like it had been painted on, which it essentially had been during multiple fitting appointments with a personal tailor. The 8-carat diamond ring on her finger caught the studio lights and threw little sparks of refracted light across the courtroom like she was carrying a disco ball on her hand. Her perfectly manicured nails, done just yesterday at $200 for the full set, tapped impatiently against that $85,000 Hermes Birkin bag as she surveyed the room with barely concealed contempt. Her body language screamed entitlement from the moment she crossed the threshold. She was checking her iPhone immediately, right there in the courtroom where phones are supposed to be silenced and put away, scrolling through messages like she had far more important things to deal with than these tedious legal proceedings. She looked around the courtroom with an expression that clearly communicated her assessment of everyone present. The audience members in their regular clothes, the court staff in their professional but unremarkable attire, even Judge Judy herself sitting behind that bench, all of them registered in Vivian's eyes as lesser beings, people who existed on a different, lower plane of society than someone of her wealth and status. Her sunglasses, expensive designer sunglasses that cost more than a decent used car, were perched on top of her head even though she was indoors in a courtroom with controlled lighting. It was a power move, a fashion statement, a signal that she existed by different rules than ordinary people who understand basic courtroom etiquette and respect. The contrast when Jennifer Rodriguez entered could not have been more stark, more visually dramatic for everyone watching. Jennifer was a 29-year-old Latina woman wearing a modest business suit that she'd probably bought specifically for this court appearance, something professional but clearly off the rack from a department store, not custom tailored, not designer label, just appropriate and respectful. Her hands were trembling slightly as she clutched a worn manila folder containing receipts, time logs, text message printouts, and every piece of documentation she'd carefully collected over 8 months of unpaid labor. You could see the nervousness in her eyes, the fear of someone who understands she's about to face off against a person with essentially unlimited legal resources and social connections. But underneath that nervousness was something else, something stronger. Determination. Dignity. The quiet resolve of someone who knows they've been wronged and refuses to stay silent. Judge Judy began the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom air with the precision of a surgical scalpel. "Ms. Blackwell, you're suing Ms. Rodriguez for $15,000, claiming she stole designer clothing from your home. Tell me exactly what happened." It was a simple, straightforward question, the kind Judge Judy had asked literally thousands of times in her decades on the bench. But Vivian's response immediately signaled to everyone watching that this case was going to be anything but ordinary. Instead of answering the question directly with facts and timeline, Vivian launched into a performance that would have made community theater directors cringe with embarrassment. "Your Honor," she began, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sophistication that screamed nouveau riche entitlement, "this woman completely violated my trust in the most egregious way possible. I opened my home to her, gave her access to my private spaces, treated her like family, and she repaid that generosity by stealing irreplaceable pieces from my wardrobe collection. But then she made her first critical mistake." Instead of sticking to the facts Judge Judy had requested, Vivian started editorializing, adding commentary like, "as anyone with any sense would understand," and, "obviously she has no concept of respect for other people's property." She punctuated her statements with dramatic eye rolls and exaggerated sighs, treating the courtroom like her personal stage for a one-woman show about how difficult it is to find trustworthy help in today's world. Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, that subtle warning sign that experienced viewers of the show have learned to recognize as the moment before a storm hits. "Ms. Blackwell," she interrupted, her tone still professional but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut through steel, "I didn't ask for your character analysis or social commentary. I asked what happened to your clothing. Can you answer that specific question?" The audience could feel the shift in energy, that electric moment right before lightning strikes, but Vivian, completely blinded by her own arrogance and sense of superiority, missed the warning entirely. Instead of backing down, instead of recognizing she was about to step off a cliff, she doubled down on her disrespect. She let out an exaggerated sigh, the exact kind of condescending sound she probably made when dealing with incompetent store clerks who couldn't understand her complex coffee order, and said with barely concealed irritation, "Well, if you'll actually let me finish my explanation, Your Honor, I was trying to provide the necessary context for you to understand the situation fully." The courtroom went absolutely dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze in place. In 25 years of presiding over cases, Judge Judy had developed a reputation for not tolerating disrespect, and Vivian had just crossed a line that most people knew better than to even approach. But the disaster was only beginning. Vivian's phone buzzed in her handbag, and she actually, incredibly, reached for it during her testimony. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen while Judge Judy was looking at paperwork. Judge Judy's head snapped up immediately. "Ms. Blackwell, put that phone away right now." Vivian had the audacity to respond, "It's my husband calling from Tokyo. He's closing a billion-dollar acquisition deal and I need to make sure everything is on track." Judge Judy's voice dropped to that dangerously quiet register that regular viewers know means someone is about to get destroyed. "I don't care if it's the President of the United States calling to discuss nuclear launch codes. You are in my courtroom, and you will put that phone away immediately, or I will have the bailiff confiscate it and hold you in contempt." Vivian complied, but with an exaggerated eye roll so dramatic that the cameras captured it in perfect high definition, an eye roll that would later become a viral GIF shared millions of times across social media with captions about entitled rich people getting their comeuppance. Then Judge Judy did what she does best. She turned her attention to Jennifer Rodriguez and asked her to present her side of the story. Jennifer spoke with quiet dignity, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness about confronting someone with so much wealth and power. She explained how Vivian had hired her in January as a personal stylist with a promised salary of $3,500 per month. She described working 40 to 50 hours per week, shopping for Vivian, organizing her massive walk-in closet that contained over 300 designer pieces, coordinating outfits for charity galas and social events, essentially being on call whenever Vivian decided she needed fashion assistance. Jennifer presented 8 months of unpaid invoices, meticulously detailed time logs showing every hour she worked, text messages where she politely asked about payment and received promises of "next week" repeatedly. She showed bank statements proving she never received a single payment beyond the first month. The evidence was overwhelming, organized, methodical, the kind of documentation that showed Jennifer had been preparing for this moment, knowing she'd need every scrap of proof to fight someone with Vivian's resources. Vivian couldn't contain herself. She kept interrupting Jennifer's testimony, standing up dramatically and shouting, "That's not true," and "she's lying," and "this is completely fabricated." Judge Judy finally had enough. "Ms. Blackwell, sit down and be quiet. You will get your turn to respond, but right now you are going to listen without interruption, or I will find you in contempt of court. Do you understand me?" Vivian sat down, but she made sure to mutter just loud enough for the microphones to pick up, "This is absolutely ridiculous. I shouldn't have to sit here and be accused like some common criminal." Then came the moment that would change everything, the moment that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform and become the defining image of entitled wealth meeting immovable justice. Judge Judy pulled out Jennifer's evidence folder and began examining the photographs that Jennifer had taken of Vivian's closet for organizational purposes during her employment. These weren't just random snapshots. These were detailed, methodical photographs showing every section of that massive walk-in closet, every designer piece hanging in perfect order, every shoe displayed on custom shelving, every handbag arranged by color and season. But here's what made these photographs absolutely devastating to Vivian's entire case. Judge Judy looked up from the folder with that expression that longtime viewers recognize instantly, that knowing look that says she's about to destroy someone's entire argument with facts they didn't know she possessed. "Ms. Blackwell, you claim that Ms. Rodriguez stole approximately $50,000 worth of designer clothing from your closet. You've listed items including 3 Chanel jackets, 2 Gucci dresses, 4 pairs of Christian Louboutin shoes, and multiple handbags. Is that correct?" Vivian nodded eagerly, thinking she finally had Judge Judy's attention on the theft rather than the unpaid wages. "Yes, Your Honor, exactly. Those are just some of the pieces she took. The actual total is probably much higher, but I can't remember every single item because I own so many things." Judge Judy held up the photographs, angling them so the courtroom cameras could capture them clearly. These photographs were taken by Ms. Rodriguez as part of her organizational system for your wardrobe. They're dated and time-stamped by your own home security system, which Ms. Rodriguez accessed with your explicit permission to document her work. These photos were taken on September 15, which according to your own testimony was 2 weeks after Ms. Rodriguez stopped working for you. And here's what's fascinating, Ms. Blackwell. Every single item you claim was stolen is visible in these photographs, hanging in your closet, 2 weeks after you claimed they were taken. Would you like to explain that? The color drained from Vivian's face so quickly it looked like someone had pulled a plug and let all the blood run out. Her mouth opened and closed several times, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, she stammered out, "Those photographs must be fake." She obviously photoshopped them or manipulated the dates somehow. You can do anything with computers these days. Judge Judy's expression could have frozen molten lava. "Ms. Blackwell, these images have metadata embedded in them from your security system. They're authenticated by the timestamp from equipment you own, in your home, with your security codes. Are you suggesting Ms. Rodriguez somehow hacked your home security system to fabricate evidence?" But Vivian wasn't done digging her hole deeper. She tried another approach, her voice taking on that wheedling, manipulative tone that probably worked on people she could intimidate or buy off. "Your Honor, even if those specific items weren't taken, she still took other things. I know she did. I just can't provide a complete list because I own so much that it's impossible to keep track of everything. That's why I hire people like her in the first place." Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes locked on Vivian like a predator that's just spotted wounded prey. "So let me make sure I understand your position correctly. You're suing for $15,000 for stolen items you cannot name, cannot prove existed, never reported to police, and which appear in photographs taken after they were allegedly stolen. Is that an accurate summary of your case?" Vivian's lawyer brain, the one she didn't actually possess because she'd never worked a day practicing law despite her frequent claims of understanding legal matters better than actual attorneys, finally recognized she was losing badly. She shifted tactics completely. "Your Honor, the real issue here isn't about a few pieces of clothing. The real issue is that this woman, Jennifer, she wasn't performing her duties adequately. She was always late, always making mistakes, always needing supervision. I was essentially training her, giving her experience and exposure to high-end fashion that she never could have accessed otherwise. That's valuable. That's worth something." Judge Judy's voice took on that particular quality that made her famous, that combination of disbelief and righteous anger that millions of viewers tune in specifically to experience. "Ms. Blackwell, are you actually arguing that working for you without pay was compensation enough because Ms. Rodriguez got to see expensive clothing?" Vivian, incredibly, impossibly, doubled down one more time. "Your Honor, people at my level, we provide opportunities that are worth more than money. Jennifer got to attend events, meet influential people, build her portfolio with high-profile clients. She should have been paying me for that access. And that's when it happened." Judge Judy began delivering her preliminary assessment, her voice heavy with the weight of decades of experience dealing with people exactly like Vivian. "Ms. Blackwell, from everything I've seen here today, you have no case whatsoever. You've exploited a young woman who trusted you, refused to pay her for 8 months of full-time labor, and then fabricated false theft allegations to avoid paying what you legitimately owe. This is one of the clearest cases of wage theft and employer exploitation I've encountered in my 25 years on this bench." That's when Vivian laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an uncomfortable chuckle, but a genuine, full-throated, amused laugh that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. She actually turned to look directly at the camera, making eye contact with the millions of viewers watching at home, and said with a smirk that dripped condescension, "Can you believe this? She actually thinks I'm going to pay this girl." Then she turned back to Judge Judy, and what came out of her mouth next would seal her fate completely and irrevocably. "Your Honor, with all due respect, you clearly don't understand how the real world works for people at my level. People like Jennifer, no offense to her, but they should feel grateful for opportunities to work alongside success, to be around luxury and sophistication. That experience, that exposure, it's worth far more than some paycheck that she'd probably just waste anyway." The courtroom didn't just go silent. It went beyond silent into some new territory where even breathing seemed too loud, where the air itself seemed to stop moving, where time appeared to freeze as everyone processed what they'd just witnessed. Judge Judy stood up slowly from her bench, and everyone who had ever watched even a single episode of her show knew exactly what that meant. When Judge Judy rises from her seat, when she physically stands to deliver judgment, it means someone has crossed a line so far beyond acceptable that ordinary seated authority isn't enough to convey the magnitude of their failure. Her face was a mask of controlled fury, the kind of expression that comes from 25 years of dealing with liars, cheats, and frauds, but rarely encountering someone with Vivian's particular combination of wealth, arrogance, and complete lack of basic human decency. "Ms. Blackwell," she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute moral authority, "in my 25 years presiding over approximately 20,000 cases, I have seen every variety of human behavior. I've seen liars who were at least clever enough to make their lies somewhat believable. I've seen thieves who had the decency to show some remorse when caught. I've seen frauds who at least understood they were doing something wrong. But I have rarely, very rarely, encountered someone with your level of contempt for basic human decency, for the dignity of labor, and for the people who work to make your comfortable lifestyle possible." Vivian tried to interrupt, her voice rising with indignation, "Your Honor, I think you're being completely unfair and, Judge Judy's voice cut through like a blade. Be quiet. I am not finished, and you will not speak until I tell you that you may speak. Do you understand me? The judgment came like hammer blows, each word precisely chosen to maximize impact. Your lawsuit for $15,000 is dismissed with prejudice, meaning you can never bring these fabricated theft charges again. Not only do you owe Ms. Rodriguez the $22,000 in unpaid wages that you stole from her through 8 months of exploitation, but I am awarding her an additional $25,000 in punitive damages for your malicious false accusations that could have destroyed her reputation and her ability to work in this industry. Your total obligation is $47,000. Vivian's mouth fell open in shock, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the genuine horror spreading across her face. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to pay Ms. Rodriguez's legal fees of $5,000 and court costs of $2,500, bringing your total obligation to $54,500. And Ms. Blackwell, here's what you need to understand very clearly. This judgment is against you personally, not your husband, not some corporate entity, but you as an individual. If you don't pay within 30 days, Ms. Rodriguez can pursue collection, which means liens on any property in your name, garnishment of any income you personally earn, and a public record that will follow you everywhere you go for the rest of your life. Vivian finally found her voice, shrill and desperate. I don't have property in my name. Everything belongs to my husband. I don't have income. You can't collect from me. Judge Judy's response was delivered with surgical precision. Then I suggest you ask your billionaire husband for an allowance, Ms. Blackwell, because this debt is yours to pay. Perhaps he can deduct it from your monthly shopping budget. Then Judge Judy did something she rarely does. She turned away from Vivian entirely and addressed Jennifer directly, her voice softening with genuine compassion. Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize that you had to experience this exploitation and then be forced to defend yourself against false accusations in this courtroom. You deserve to be paid fairly for your work from the very first day. Labor has dignity. Work has value. You have dignity and value, regardless of what this woman tried to make you believe about yourself. I hope this judgment helps you rebuild and move forward. Then she turned back to Vivian with eyes like ice. Shame on you, Ms. Blackwell. Shame on you for exploiting a young woman who trusted you. Shame on you for treating another human being like she existed solely for your convenience. Shame on you for thinking your husband's money made you superior to people who actually work for a living. The word shame broke something fundamental inside Vivian. This was a woman who had spent her entire adult life being envied, admired, courted by social climbers wanting access to her wealth and connections. Nobody had ever shamed her, not since she married into billions and insulated herself with layers of wealth and sycophants who told her whatever she wanted to hear. She tried one final desperate gambit, her voice cracking with genuine panic. Your Honor, please, you have to understand. If this airs on national television, it will humiliate my husband. His business partners will see it. His investors will question his judgment. Can't we settle this privately? I'll pay her double, triple what you've ordered, but please don't broadcast this. Judge Judy's response was final and absolute. Your concern is your husband's embarrassment. Not the 17 other workers my staff discovered you've exploited over the past 5 years. Not the over $200,000 in combined wages you've stolen from people who couldn't fight back. This case is being broadcast to millions of people, Ms. Blackwell. Your humiliation is public, permanent, and completely deserved. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before treating human beings like disposable objects. The gavel came down with a sound like thunder, final and irrevocable. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, Vivian's laugh became the #1 trending clip across every social media platform in existence. The hashtag Billionaire's Wife Destroyed accumulated over 3 million posts in the first day. News outlets from CNN to local stations picked up the story with headlines like Judge Judy exposes systematic wage theft by billionaire's wife and when entitlement meets justice. Vivian's moment of arrogant laughter was edited into memes, reaction videos, and commentary pieces about wealth inequality and worker exploitation. Her name became synonymous with entitled wealthy people who believe money places them above basic human decency. The California Labor Commissioner opened a formal investigation that uncovered 23 additional workers with unpaid wage claims totaling $347,000 over 7 years. Marcus Blackwell's PR team went into full crisis mode, issuing statements about being unaware of his wife's employment practices and immediately paying all legitimate claims. Sources close to the family reported he was absolutely furious about the public embarrassment and allegedly cut Vivian's monthly allowance from $80,000 to $15,000, telling her she needed to learn what money actually means. Jennifer Rodriguez used her $54,500 judgment to pay off student loans and launch her own styling business, building a client list of people who specifically wanted to support someone who'd stood up to exploitation. She hired 2 assistants within 6 months and paid them $25 per hour, always on time, always with respect. Vivian's social circle evaporated overnight. Charity boards quietly removed her from committees. Her country club started forgetting her reservations. The private school parent group created new chat threads without her. She eventually moved to the Blackwells' London property to escape American media scrutiny. Her Instagram changed from public to private after losing 400,000 followers in 1 month. 1 year later, she and Marcus remain married but live on separate continents, her dreams of social prominence destroyed by 47 seconds of laughter that proved wealth cannot shield you from accountability when you finally meet someone who refuses to be impressed by your bank account. Smash that like button if you believe Judge Judy delivered exactly the justice Vivian needed to learn. Comment wage theft is theft if you think every worker deserves to be paid for their labor. Hit subscribe because we bring you stories where entitled people discover that money doesn't place you above basic human decency. Remember, in Judge Judy's courtroom, your wealth means nothing, your character means everything, and your arrogant laughter will be the last sound you make before reality destroys everything you thought made you untouchable. This is what happens when a billionaire's wife learns that no amount of money can buy respect, dignity, or immunity from consequences. This is Vivian Blackwell's story, and it's a permanent reminder that justice still exists for those brave enough to demand it.